maybe the subject of the ocean and the coast, I don't know if it is so common within this university, but, well...
I don't think we have a maritime.
Yeah, that's right.
Fred does a lot of it with the ecology stuff.
Okay. Yeah, ecology, okay. So this is my topic, and what I'm doing right now in Japan. Kind of collaboration as a visiting fellow within this Ocean Policy Research Foundation, which is very close. Foundation NPO, if you want, but we're very close to the government. That is the Japanese functioning in regard to governance, and they have been really at the leaders of the preparation and then the enactment of the Ocean Basic Law, as you know, very recently that was passed in 2007. So it's not at all. So what we're going to talk about this tonight is really something that is new, and it's not only for Japan. It's well for all the countries in the world, including the United States. I would say a few words about it. We just came up the task force named by the Obama administration. We just came up with a national policy for the first time for the United States, and the National Ocean Council has been set up by decree say some weeks ago. So very recent for everybody. So, okay, I'm not learning you anything new. We have global problems, environmental crisis, and I think, well, regarding the biodiversity, for example, we had a good picture from the last conference of parties at the Convention of Biodiversity in Nagoya. We were lucky enough to have this meeting taking place in Nagoya, and as you know, the result, well, have been a very harsh discussion, but simply also the assessment is that we are not getting any say improvement for the moment in regard to this biodiversity. On the contrary, we are on the verge of degradation more and more, in spite of all the say policies. Yes, but I will come back to that. Policies, but also very much uncoordinated policies. So, and then one of the worst financial, economic, and social crises, as we consider in post-war history, and it's not the end of it. We know. So here, regarding the scale, is the answer global or local? And you can see, of course, the ocean is really a concern because, well, it is 70%. Just remind you that, well, we talk about planet Earth. That is the one we know, the one we live. But this is only 30% of the planet. The ocean is 70% of that planet. So, well, we can call it planet ocean, right? And we're used to it. To call it planet ocean. It's quite not new, but well, good to know and to remind, because well, most of the time, of course, we know where we live in. We don't know much about this well huge area, which is in the same time a kind of abyss, because it's a 3 dimensions area, and as you can see, averaging about 4,000 meters below the sea surface, with a maximum of 10,000 meters or more. So we can say that 99% of this Earth biosphere, that is all the living matter, living things, are well under marine waters, and we know only 5% of it, about 5% of it. You can imagine. So we're just at the beginning. They just the closing of a big international program, which is called the Census for Marine Life, which was presented in Nagoya in one of these events. And well, it's quite amazing to see, in spite of the tremendous work and the mobilization of thousands of scientists, we're still at that stage. So, well, quite a big way, a long way to go. So now, it's not that we are doing nothing. we have, well, I call it a sea, we could call it a forest on Earth, of international agreements. Remember, maybe you know, but certainly you know some of them. 82, one of the most important regarding the ocean, the Convention on the Law of the Sea, which well gives the countries then to sovereignty on well it's an exclusive economic zone. I will go back to that. And this was coming mainly from the fisheries, from the fishing activity. There was a need really for the countries to come up with clear boundaries in regard to the sharing of the marine resources, especially in regard to fisheries. So there have been this definition of territorial waters, exclusive economic zone, and international waters, that is not under the country's sovereignty. So then, while I go quickly, 87, very important step, this concept, the very concept of sustainable development that started to come up. It's not that well, it didn't exist before, but well, really it was officialized and admitted by all the governments and the countries at that time. Then well, all this notion, of course, you know it. We now more and more working with it every day through the newspapers, but also locally where we are, especially on the coast, of course, the impact of climate change. This global change, which impact also to the local level. So there have been then the Rio Convention. And the Rio Convention gave us some concept, integrated coastal management, ecosystem-based management. I will come back to that because well, there's also a forest of a concept like that, and it's extremely difficult then for the people, stakeholders, for the decision makers to make up their mind in regard to all these different agreements, these different concepts. There's a total confusion about the use of it and how they can change their own policies, how they can improve what they are doing already. So ecosystem services, one of the last one. Maybe you heard from the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which also gives quite a poor picture of what the state of the ecosystems all around the world, including the marine ecosystems, of course. And but what is interesting is that they came up with a kind of logical framework, and they define these economic services. I will come back to in a moment. So just to give you an overall picture, exclusive economic zone, of course, for the countries, is quite important because all of a sudden it gives well a huge territory, and and this territory most of the time is totally unknown or almost unknown. So that means a lot of research, a lot of surveys, and of course a lot of economic analysis in regard to the resources that can be exploited, with all the risk which goes with it, of course, in regard to the environmental impact. So it's more and more what is the kind of topic which is coming to the table at the international level of different countries. So just to give you an idea about the dimension of these huge territories, maritime territories. United States, first one with more than 11 million square kilometers. France, surprisingly, because why? And you will see, because of the overseas territories, not because of metropolitan France in Europe, but the overseas territories. This huge makes, thanks to that convention on the law of the sea, it gives a huge territory. So you can see the strategic importance for the countries, this new maritime territory to develop, and to develop in a sustainable way, if it is possible. Australia, Russia, Canada, and Japan. Japan is on the 6th position in regard to the superficie of this maritime territory, but it's quite important, as you can see, and of course a very strategic one. We know all, and we've seen the TV and all these pictures of conflict already between China, South Korea in regard to the boundaries, and between the EEZ, because what is at stake? It is the mineral resources, it is the oil, it is all these resources, fisheries of course. And you can understand that the tiny island, of course, like the Saint-Coteau, is extremely important for the definition of these boundaries, of course. But for territory, we don't know yet, but it has great potential. So just to give you the visual insight of these definition of the different waters within this exclusive economic zone. So what we call the internal waters, for example, a bay, a lake, or a lagoon, then the islands, of course, and then the territorial waters, which is 12 nautical miles, territorial waters. So you can well, understand and guess that most of the maritime activities, of course, in regard to the coast, are taking place within that territorial waters, 12 nautical miles. So already you can guess that this is quite important, not only for the central government, but for the local government as well. And this is changing very quickly because in Japan, like in some other countries, we are in a highly centralized system. And even if there has been a decentralization, well, most of the time, when it comes to the marine waters, it is all the state. So today, there is a question of how this maritime territory is going to be shared in regard to the process of decision making and the sharing of the resources that the local governments, more and more prefectures in Japan, are asking to have their say. Then there's the exclusive economic zone, and then the extension also, moreover, 200 nautical miles, moreover, there is also an extension of the continental shelf. When there is an extension of the continental shelf, there is an international agency that will take all the countries make a request to have this extension of the continental shelf recognized officially and again to enlarge the boundary of the exclusive economic zone, so that can make 350 nautical miles. So you can imagine how large it is. An example of the exclusive economic zone here for the United States. So you can see, of course, that all of a sudden the tiny island in the middle of the Pacific become a very important strategic platform. So it's very important also for the people and living on the island, because all of a sudden they are not at the periphery of the country. They are right in the middle of a very strategic maritime area. So that changed somewhat the picture, really, and the strategy even for the country itself. It's quite important, and it's just the beginning. Again, just this has been, this map is included in the task force final recommendations, and well, this is very new. Nobody knew about it before. It was there, but well, the decision makers were not using it because, well, most of the time they ignore totally the ocean. They ignore the marine waters. So we are really, and it is the same for Japan. So also to give you an idea for example, for Japan, exclusive economic zone. So you see how much these tiny islands are important in regard to the delimitation of the exclusive economic zone. That gives a great advantage. But you can see also all the areas of conflict potential, or really there conflict between countries in regard to the so there is an international court which is based in Jamaica to judge and to try to settle these conflicts between countries. And also the easy for France. So you see that metropolitan France is not much, but for example, French Polynesia in the Pacific represent 47% of the whole territory. So of course it becomes extremely strategic, including in regard to the relationship between the government of French Polynesia and the central government of France. Europe, the same. Here it's not boundaries of the exclusive economic zone, but we come up also with this idea that we are dealing with marine ecoregions. meaning that well, we're trying to make it's not just about administrative boundaries, but try to take into account something we know well more or less in regard to the big current, oceanic current, to have an idea of these definition of these marine eco-regions more and more. Here, for example, this is an example for the European maritime policy of definition of these marine eco-regions. So more or less that means that they represent a large marine ecosystem which makes sense in regard to its functioning. Well, as far as well we can know, because well, most of the time we have very few insight into the functioning of these very large scale system. So as I was stating before, Nagoya, but well, still we can see that the Marine Living Planet Index is getting down. So we are far from restoring the marine environment. And the data we have, we know it's not just about scientific data, because well, you can guess these scientific data, whether this is recent now, I mean, because well, research, scientific research, well, started maybe at the beginning of the 19th century. But we have much more data through archaeological findings, travelers' accounts, archival records, etc. And for sure, we know that well, we have been on the decrease for centuries and centuries. It's not just because of the industrial era, but it started well before this decrease. Yes?
Water.
Yeah, not the water. It's about the ecosystem. If you want to have the ecosystem represented by the biodiversity, for example, which is not wrong, the biodiversity will be decreasing, generally speaking. That means we don't have anymore what we had in the past, and it's something we ignore totally. So we have no baseline about what we had before. Well, we know more or less that we lost a lot. But it is extremely difficult to come up with a baseline and see, well, and compare what we are doing today, what we have today, with what was there in the past. Is what I mean, and this is a real issue. So just to put some dynamic into the system. We have to think that this is a very simple, say, cycle in regard biological cycle. In regard, you can put here one species, but you can put also a shoal of fishes. You can put a forest here, and with a forest, maybe there's something we know better. It's easy to see that well, okay, we have always a period of growth, accumulation of biomass, and then well, this accumulation of biomass, conservation. Becomes so huge that well, at one time there is a spark, and the spark well can be made by humans, but well natural as well. Most of the time today it's well unfortunately by humans. But then because of that spark and this accumulation of biomass, there's going to be a distraction, a kind of collapse of these biomass. So we call it a positive destruction. Why? Because, well, it's not a void behind. There's something else building up. But it is something else. We are not going back to what we had at the beginning. So for sure, and we are evolving all the time like that. So you can take a forest as an ecosystem, and you can take also a different scale. You can take the large marine ecosystem I was talking about. The big marine ecoregions. So of course, the functioning and the time lapse will be very different depending on the scale of the ecosystem. But well, fundamentally, it's going to be the same kind of cycle. So that means something extremely non-linear, unstable all the time, and with the thresholds. So the problem is to know where we are in regard to these thresholds. Are we close to the collapsing threshold or not? And this is something extremely difficult to predict. Think of an example, for example, a very well-known the Aral Sea in Russia. That was, well, this is a typical ecological catastrophe and collapse, total collapse, because of the irrigation for the cotton industry, and irrigation on the water basin, no more water, while adding up to this well, closed sea, and then well, the water receding to the point that, well, today there's almost nothing. So that has been a total collapse from the ecological point of view, of course, but also for the well-being of humans with diseases, etc., all these problems. So just to tell that we are totally dependent on the system. We are here, for example, urban people living in a very urbanized environment, etc. So we think, we forget that we are totally dependent on that natural environment. Otherwise, it's why we're talking about ecosystem services. All these services, putting aside the products that we pay, the fish on the market that we pay, but all the other services are for free. And for example, all this recycling work of nature, in order to nutrients, for example, the recycling of nutrients. We know that the sea has a very important role. The recycling of CO2, the climate change. We know that the sea is a sink for the CO2. But well, one day we realize today that well, we have to pay for it, because all of a sudden it's why we have this carbon credit today, which has been set up at the international level. It's so difficult to tackle. But it is the trend right now to take into account this dynamic of the ecosystem as far as we can, because we can understand how complicated it is, how well interconnected is everything. So when we treat one issue, well, there are 1,000 other issues that we don't take into account, and of course that influence, of course, the overall situation. So it's quite a challenge. So a sea of uncoordinated initiatives. Agenda 21, just to give you this example, this is our problem. This United Nations Conference on the Environment Development, the famous one, the Rio Convention. We're going to soon have the, 10 years after next convention. One of the chapters in this Agenda 21 is talking about integrated coastal and marine management. So that concept of integrated coastal management, I will come back to. Chapter 15, another chapter, conservation of biological diversity. Already between the two, you can see the focus, which is quite different. One is focusing on maritime activities, human activities. The other one, the entry, is biodiversity. And there are very different circle of people behind this. To start with the scientists, of course, and the NGOs. So now it's changing, and if you have been to Nagoya, you will see how encouraging it is to see that, well, the biodiversity conservation people, institutions, NGOs, etc., and, well, the developers, maritime activities people, well, are somewhat converging. On one side, well, is the people of the biodiversity conservation understand that well, it's impossible to just protect and not accept that to have multi-use marine protected areas, for example. And on the other side, more and more, and to start with the fishers, some of them, at least the more enlightened, well, understand that well, if they have the fishing rights, they have also duties, and they have to really take care of the environment that give them the resources, the fishes. So, and then the last chapter on the protection of quality and the supply of fresh water. So again, and we know that about, say, 80% of the pollution problems we have in the coastal waters coming from the water basin, of course. So, of course, it matters what for any manager, any decision maker on the coast, what is done on the top of the water basin matters very much in regard to this runoff the quality of the weather to the last receiving body, which is the sea. So, okay, what is it, this concept, integrated coastal management? I just said it. If you just buy a small, you want to picture it, promote the people who are trying to preserve the place, and biodiversity conservation, exactly the other way around, preserve the place while engaging the people. So probably there's a mean to have these people meeting together and try to, because behind there are different policies, including at the government level. So the problem is how to put these policies in synergies, not together, but interconnect these policies and put them together in connection so that it makes sense in regard to the intervention on the natural environment. So in which context? Okay, so you're going to find this a little bit complicated. Just try to give you a very good picture. The advantage here is that you have about everything. On the left-hand side, this is coming from the more or less from the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. This kind of logical framework I was talking about. We need it. We know that the truth and the knowledge is much more complicated than that. Of course, impossible to put it on scheme. But we need that kind of vision. Why? Because we need to share the vision. If we don't share any vision between us, just for example, between us in this room, in regard to our belief, in regard to our vision of the future, it would be very difficult to do anything together. So it is what it is. It is why it is done that way. So left-hand side, all the drivers of change, the pressures, if you want. And these drivers of change are direct, indirect, typically climate change. This is a global scale change. They are not all global scale, depends. But of course, the pressure fishing activity is a pressure, and a source of change on the system. And we saw that the fisheries, today we can say, has a global impact. A global impact, of course, but a global impact because, especially on the pelagic interoceanic species, for example, the tuna. So then after that, you have the natural system. And the natural system is made of what? Of environmental processes. So environmental processes is about the physics, is about the chemistry, and of course it's going to determine the biology, so the biodiversity at the end. That's why the biodiversity is in the middle of course, it's totally dependent on the, say, the good functioning of these environmental processes. And then something very in the middle. These economic services. It is a way to start to try to put a value on a number of services that are rendered by the ecosystem for the well-being of the human beings. That's the idea behind. So of course, one we know, provisioning. Provisioning is about the product, the fish in the market, the fish on your table. You pay a price for it. That we know. The problem is that more and more now, and the economists are interested in trying to define the non-use value of the things. And this is very important because more and more is going to determine. We see it for the CO2, warming gases. It's quite now an issue between governments. And later on, we can dream that we will pass from this very primitive GDP, gross development product, which is just talking about quantity of things, to something more, say, qualitative in regard to the human well-being. We know that it is absolutely not representative of, say, this human well-being. So a lot of people, economists and so on, governments are also getting more and more interested in defining a kind of a human development index, like the World Bank the World Bank has. But quite a different one, even a more sophisticated there was, I think it was the king of Bhutan, who was talking about the gross happiness index, or something like that. It was quite, well, it was not a joke. I mean, it was really, really low. And today, yes, we are really, especially we in our countries, we really, I think, at a turning point in regard to the definition of the growth. What it is, probably it won't be, ever what it has been in the past. We know we have to change the system. It's not so easy. But, well, I think it's already on the way, even if we don't see it really for the moment. And then, well, going a little bit more to the right, you have all these stakeholders, all these conflicts between stakeholders about, well, the use of these services. Of course, it is conflicting, totally conflicting, within countries and between countries, between EEZ, the exclusive economic zone as well. So, and then trying to set up these governance in order to, manage these conflict and the use of these services, this governance approach with the governments, of course, governments in the center, but it's not only governments. It's about the civil society. It's about the private sector. It's about the market. Market is one of the main driver of change, and global one. We know how much it weighs on the say today on the definition of the policies at the national level. So and then I put that on the bottom, the knowledge community. Of course, knowledge is fundamental, but knowledge is not just the property of scientists. More and more we try. It's not easy. We try to take into consideration this knowledge which is there with the stakeholders. Each user, a fisher, for example, of course, has knowledge. The problem is that, well, he's keeping this knowledge for himself, of course, because he has his secrets in regard to the place where he's fishing. But at the same time, he knows a lot about the species. He knows a lot about the movement of the shores of fish, etc. Probably much more than any scientist can do, because, well, the scientist is not at sea, I don't know, maybe 200 days a year, like the fisher. So that kind of, say, not only local ecological knowledge, but also traditional knowledge from the communities having, well, passing from generation to generation this knowledge. And then, of course, all these institutions which are, well, bringing the policies and putting the different stakeholders together. And you see at the bottom, of course, how then at the end, the driver really will be the way we manage the government and the way we manage the activities that are going to influence, of course, the quality of the services, influence also the state of the biodiversity, and of course we can also try to change these drivers of change. Well, to begin with, one of the most difficult climate change. So, okay, this is the overall picture. I don't know if it's very clear, but I like to use it because, well, you can tell a lot of things using this. Then, again, the dynamic of scale. This is a great barrier reef in Australia. Of course, you understand just with a first glance like that, that if you consider, depending on the scale, the functioning and the study of the functioning of your ecosystem, the ecosystem can be at that scale. That is a very small scale, some meters, and you have a whole world in that well, some square meters. Of course, this is a kind of ecosystem already. Then you can pass well something quite much larger, and again, the functioning of the ecosystem is going to be totally different. The interaction between at that scale between the different communities and using the different habitats will be very different. And again, at that scale, it's going to be also very different. You can have big problems here at a very say small scale, but at a large scale you won't see it, of course, and it won't have such a big impact. The problem is to know what kind of threshold we should not trespass here over there on the top, the image at the top, in order to keep the good health and the good quality of all the services I was just talking about for the whole Great Barrier Reef, and that's quite a problem. So all this to say that well, the problem of the coast of the ocean is a problem of human behavior. We won't change so much. I mean, this natural environment will be impacted. It will be very difficult. It will be very difficult to get back in regard to the climate change impact. Of course not, probably not, certainly not. But well, what we can work out is really this changing the human behavior in regard to our practices and the way we manage resources. And it must be tackled at a multi-scale level. So we have to think your policies always at different scale, put into context what you're doing, even at the local level. Because, well, you can understand that at the local level, you have also the impact of global phenomena, like the climate change. So it's extremely difficult, but it is the only way to find out the right answer and the right policy. So that means also kind of collaboration between institutions at a different governance level. And it is a problem of governance, as I was talking about, and that is the way decisions are made. And in order to generate this sense of ownership, it's about that. I know that, well, it's a buzzword today, governance. Everybody is talking about governance. But it's about that, I mean, how to share the decision making so that each one really feel that well, it owns the process, and that well, really then he will respond in regard to the law, in regard to the policy that has been set up all together. And this is a real issue that well, even the most highly centralized government well consider today, because well, there is no other way to tackle with such a complicated system, socio-ecosystem. Okay, what we have. So to try to restore this ecosystem resilience, as we say, that is this capacity to absorb the shocks coming from the different drivers of change, the different impacts. At the global level, you have well all these. Well, to start with the UN international organization. I think the bad news is that for the ocean, we don't have much. We have many different UN organizations, UNEP, UNDP, etc. But well, they are not just dealing with the ocean, far from it. And there is just one agency, UN agency, UN Ocean, which is well supposed to make the coordination between these different UN organizations, well, which doesn't happen, of course. It happens for water, yes, much more, much better, but not yet for ocean. And I can tell you, for us, I would say practitioners in regard to the coast of the ocean management is quite a problem today, because we don't have the tools for that global governance today. And you see how important it is to come up with, say, a good governance mechanism also at the global level. Okay, transnational networks. What is interesting is that, well, we're talking networks more and more, even the governments. The G8 or the G20 are not intergovernmental organizations. They are just transnational networks between governments. So this is something, it's why, I mean, it's so different from any kind of intergovernmental organization that has much more flexibility. And fortunately, well, we have more flexibility because you can see how urgent certain matters now. The G20, well, can be well, today can meet together and prepare just a month. Intergovernmental organization like the Convention of Biodiversity is a whole process, extremely heavy, to get all the countries around the table and negotiate. And then, of course, what is more important to make sense with all that global governance is the national maritime policies. Without national maritime policies, if the countries don't know what they have, if the countries don't know what they want to do with this huge maritime territory, well, it's difficult for them to have a coherent position and a policy in regard to the the use and the negotiation within this international organization. You see, there is a very strong link. It's why, and it starts there. I mean, from the sovereignty of each country, of course. So national maritime policy are extremely, I would say, really the key. But they are very new, as I was saying at the beginning. It's just really the beginning. As well, surprising as it can be, it is just the beginning. So again, and of course, local implementation, like policy, and the implementation is always at the local level. So at the end, you can have a beautiful policy, fantastic law, etc. At the central level. If there is no connection, if there is no ownership at the local level, we know that nothing is going to happen. And this is very true. The politicians know it very well. That the local, let's say, connection is quite fundamental. So, very quickly, of what is made the integrated maritime policy, generally speaking, just to show you the complexity. It's not like any policy, transport policy, or fishing policy, etc. Because it's a bunch of different policies. It is about that, because all these policies are intercrossing together. So government mechanism, multi-scale application, I was talking about that, from national to even regional, national to local level. You have to take into account all the different, of course, sectoral policies, transport, maritime transport, fishing, tourism, etc. That even defense, security, which are concerned by the development of the ocean, and then all these cross-cutting, what I call cross-cutting application, biodiversity. Typically, most of the countries today, it is the case for Japan, they have a national biodiversity strategy under the Convention of Biodiversity. So. It's not about putting aside this national biodiversity strategy, but use it in this integrated maritime policy as regard the marine biodiversity. So you have to think how to make that connection between the different policies in order to make sense at the end in regard to that integrated, that we call integrated maritime policy. And the shared instruments common to all these different policies, knowledge, of course, production of knowledge, the monitoring that is capable to measure what we're doing, where we are, evaluation in order to also be capable to adapt to the changes. As you saw, the system is changing all the time; it's very unstable. It is true for the social system as well. So we have to adapt all the time. So we have really to evaluate what we're doing. And funding mechanism, of course. And we know how much funding we saw it lastly in Cancun, for example, for the climate change negotiation between rich and poor countries. How the funding is an issue, is the main issue about what we're going to do, what kind of policy we want to develop in the future. So I like these very much these pictures because integrated maritime policy is not just about technical things, planning, etc. We forget that very often. It's about cultural values. People have belief. People have their own culture in the different countries, but within also the same country. And this of course. You know them, and I will go back to it because I it indicates, today it's universal, these features from Miyazaki, but it indicates, well, these very specific and unique relationship, I think, you have in Japan with nature. It's not the same as in the Western world. And I think it is very important because talking about ecosystem-based management, necessarily the translation of ecosystem-based management in Japan won't be the same. And it has been very strongly stressed out in Nagoya by the Ministry of Environment, etc. Out there. And I was very glad to see that for the first time, I would say, really Japan was making visible what was under implementation here, and because most of the time it is totally unknown on the international arena, because simply most of the time the representatives from Japan thinks that all the space matter is just Japanese. It doesn't interest the world, and I think this is very important. Nagoya was quite, I was quite say very pleased to see that evolution. Really, that was, I think, a benchmark in regard to this visibility of what is doing Japan, for example, in regard this ecosystem approach and consideration. So, from the forest to the ocean, you find out these different concepts, integrated coastal management. That is this interface between the land and sea. And of course, the integrated water resources management, because it's about the runoff from the water basin and all the activities, agriculture, of course, first of all, and on the others, the maritime activities, and more, as you saw before, taking into account not just the coastal waters, but the whole large marine ecoregions, because we know that the oceans is a machine, and they have their integrity as such. We know the ocean bed, etc., how it works, and that, if we change the circulation of the currents, etc., just even a little bit, and that's the big worry in regard to the climate change, that's going to totally change, of course, the climate, the land production, the agricultural production, to start with, plenty of things as well. So, governance, just definition, but I already said a few words about it. Markets, government, and civil society, with all the stakeholders and institutions that come with it. Very important to remind that what is governance? It's about that. So how to make these people working together? Not a very easy answer. So now, I wanted to introduce a little bit more all these concepts, because I think it's important. Otherwise, it's very difficult to say get exactly what is happening, and including in Japan. So, what about Japan? You know it very well. Japan is an archipelagic country with many islands, and as we saw, with a huge maritime territory. But the sea, so the EEZ is the sixth in the world. Number of islands, extremely important. And you saw some of them at the periphery are extremely strategic, of course, because they will help to define the boundaries of the exclusive economic zone. The coastline and land is important because this is the interface between the land and the sea, and this is the richest, most productive one, and has been changed a lot. In Japan, especially in the 80s on the Pacific side, because of reclamation, etc. There was no choice, of course, no space, so it has to be taken up on the sea. Maritime transport, of course, it is an archipelagic country, so maritime transport is almost 100% dependent on in regard to the provision of the country, and etc. The making of the Japanese maritime policy, the national maritime policy in Japan, you have a law, Basic Ocean Act, which is great because it's not all the countries who have the law really devoted to the ocean. Basic Ocean Law, which was enacted in 2007, so very recently, and a basic plan on the ocean policy in 2008. So again, it is really just the beginning. And these measures, well, I'll let you read them. Nothing, here special. If you look at the different national maritime policies, well, more or less, they're going to look the same in regard to the measures, etc. They won't be the same in regard to the how they are developed, how they are implemented. That's going to be quite different. But of course, everybody, all the countries, well, today, because they are signatories and they have been ratifying the same international conventions, well, are sharing more or less the same concept. But then again, they are not a translation of this concept practically in the field is not necessarily the same, and it should be the same. So we have the choice. You remember at the beginning the status, grading status from the past, are generally speaking of the ecosystems that are represented here. We have the choice then to the future to we go on depleting resources, degrading the whole system, what we're doing for the moment. We try to sustain, very also, well, not easy to stay at the same level, or we try to restore. And I think this Japan is unique for that because, and I'm going to show it now. The choice of restoration is a historic and very natural behavior. Well, we are close to nature, we work with nature, and well, there's no harm trying to work out nature in order to increase the productivity of the system. So, which is totally foreign to the Western world, and I will show you some images. Here, for example, this is a sign in Akitake. Well, okay, you understand it. Just look at the picture. I mean, you put a picture like that in the United States or in Europe, well, people are going to be horrified. What's that? It's, of course, I mean, this is totally artificial, my God. We don't want that kind of landscape or seascape. So, but here, yes, and well, I heard during the series of conference that Japan was very comfortable. Yes, it is very comfortable. So, well, it works. I mean, and you have plenty of, well, reclaimed land, for example, in Kobe, etc., which are like that. And really, frankly, I'm coming from the old Europe, but I really feel comfortable in that environment because it's nice. It's made for humans, and it's not because it's new, etc., but well, it's composed and made for humans in regard to the green areas, etc. So no problem. And we know that in Japan there's no choice. This reclaimed land had to be done. And well, today, well, there's no choice to try to restore this natural environment. And they are doing it, and the fishers are doing a lot. And I think that was one of the really big message that was given in Nagoya again. And I will come to this Satoyama and Satoumi concept, which is really, I think, really unique. But that could really, I think, help a lot also the other countries in regard to their policy. So Satoyama, Satoumi, we heard a lot about Satoyama on the NHK. We had hours beautiful pictures on Satoyama just before Nagoya. You saw it probably. It was great, really enjoyed. And yes, Satoyama. So Satoyama is, well, this is typically a picture of Satoyama. How do you feel, you know, this environment, etc. But it's just human beings living in harmony with nature. Okay, and that's been made through centuries. But of course, we have satoyamas all around the world. It's not here, it's not just because of the... Okay, speed up.
Yeah, so we can have good questions.
All right, yes. If you want to interrupt me, don't hesitate.
Well, this is Japan, we don't interrupt.
This is Stanford University.
Yeah, Japan.
Okay, so Lanya, for example, here, which is not in mass, but well, it's a Satoyama. That has been, well, grown up through centuries. This is a big traditional knowledge, fantastic traditional knowledge that has passed generation to generation. And this is a real human living in harmony with nature, and we're putting nature at our service. But at the same time, we respect these balance that is needed in order to keep the good quality of the services that we need. So, okay, now if we go to the coast and to the sea, I'm sorry it's not very nice, but you're going to have that kind of picture. I don't have underwater picture. That is a whole area which is on the bottom of the sea, covered with the artificial reef, different types, etc. And developing a kind of sea ranching or sea farming, if you will. And it exists. It's there already. And some of them are working quite well. This is maybe something that, well, people who are not dealing with the fisheries don't know, even Japanese. But you have to know that. It's happening today. And today, it's about, well, not only isolated experiences like that, but it's about the networking in regard to the large ecosystem, or say regional seas, Central Sea, for example, plenty of experiences like that. The networking of all these different sea farming areas. So at the end, we have a kind of network, connected network, that will help really the ecosystem. That's what I call restoration. That will help the large marine ecosystem to keep a good state for the services at the end for the benefit of the human well-being. And here, well, you maybe know that picture is a traditional collecting of salt, a bit different from Japan. In Europe, on the West Atlantic West Coast. But well, we stop at the coast. This is a kind of satomi through centuries, have been developed through centuries with a balance with the natural environment. But it stops to the coast, it doesn't go to the sea. We protect the sea, but we don't, in Europe at least, but we don't intervene on the sea. So what I was saying, the relationship with nature, there is man and nature. For me, it's very much the Western world. Even if we now are trying to develop this ecosystem-based management approach, etc. But I think very much here in Japan, there is man with nature. There's a way, and this is coming from the culture, there's a way of cherishing the nature, which is absolutely different. Look at the art, for example, which is absolutely different from Europe. Maybe this is why you love so much in Japan the impressionists, because probably, well, they close to the sensitivity of the Japanese art in regard to the way of looking at nature. So, we saw that picture already, and I have to speed up a bit. Fishing rights, very important one. Fishing rights is something unique in Japan and in the law. It's absolutely unique. Why? Because, well, it's a whole area which is devolved by the central government through the prefectures to the fisheries corporations. And they have the entire, say, will to develop these areas and to explore these areas. So, but that means, and that's the changes that are at stake right now. That means fishing rights, okay, fine, but that means also duties. Duties to keep the environment, the functioning of the natural environment in good state. And that was totally ignored before by the fishermen. And now, of course, it's not everybody, but well, there are some leaders in the prefectures, within the administration, etc., that understand that. And that, well, really, tomorrow, that means that fishers could become the kind of gardeners of the sea as well, and not just the catches of the fish. So issue change of behavior. Another thing also which was very much publicized in Nagoya, these fisheries cooperatives have also no-take zone, as we call it, a kind of marine protected area. It's not legal. It's just, it's managed by the fisheries cooperatives, by them. And you can imagine, this is more than 1,000 marine protected areas, most of them linked to the fishery. So this is a huge, network, but there's no map. Nobody knows where it is exactly. And yes, I mean, one fishery cooperative, of course, we know. But if we go, we take the whole Seto Inland Sea, for example, there's no map. You can look for it. There's absolutely no map. Nobody knows what is the situation there. Making an inventory. So that's the kind of talk I have with my colleagues from the Ocean Policy Research Foundation. And say, look, I mean, that would be great to have to make an inventory of what is there in order to use it. No need to invent something else. Just use what we have, what you have, and just build on that capital. So that's the idea. Okay, so maritime policy here is a matter of ownership at the local level. And to start with, maybe because of the fishing rights, fishermen are definitely, this is my personal position thinking, but I think really fishermen has very strong role to play in the implementation of the maritime policy today, because they have these unique fishing rights on the whole area. So it's extremely important. Matter of networks, networking the different initiatives, and this is not easy. A matter of scale, of course, we have to, what we call nested governance. That is all the time to take into consideration in regard to the same issue, the different scale at which the different drivers of change will impact on that issue. So in between the national scale and the local scale, the problem for the moment for the implementation of the maritime policy in Japan is what is the definition of the marine ecoregions? For the moment, nobody knows. Nothing has been done that way. And the engagement of the prefectures, of course. Today, you go and you talk with the governor, with the governments there, the people from the government. Yeah, the fisheries administration is quite aware, of course, of what is happening. But the rest of the local government, the prefecture, most of the time, they do absolutely nothing about their marine waters that are just in front of them. The ports, yes, of course. But beyond that, they don't know much. So there is a kind of, even within the administration, this kind of split between the different world. That is, most of the people dealing with the policies on land and the people dealing with the policies at sea. So that's it. I think that's my last slide. I like to quote what Peter Drucker, that you probably know, a big guru in management, and Temple University probably is used to use his work. And in the last 40, 50 years, the economy was dominant. In the next 20 or 30 years, social issues will be dominant. I'm not saying it, he is saying it. And it was quite a management person. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry to be long.
No. Now, thank you very much for sharing this for the first question, which is you mentioned that Japan is now a little more vocal on this.
Yeah.
But Japan obviously is a very large maritime area. The environment matters a lot. We're struck by the impression that there's still very few Japanese who are globally involved in environmental issues and in influencing the policy debate globally. Is this right?
Yes. I remember I was there. No, you're very right. The same for the environmental issues. But you see, I think Nagoya was, others too, but Nagoya I think was quite something, because it just happened now.
And I was there really to see what was happening. And I think really, okay, it's a kind of symbol. Really a benchmark. Things are really, I could measure how much the things were changing. I've been here for the first time in the 80s, at the beginning of the 80s, stayed here for several years. So from that time, I think there a lot of change. Not always for the worst, but also I would say for the best. Not to be too pessimistic. I'm a kind of optimistic person.
Questions? Yeah. Sato-san, and then Tsukamoto-sensei, and
Thank you very much for the excellent seminar. I am very happy to review where we stand as a Japanese. What I'm concerned is the growing power of Asia, starting from China, Indonesia, and India, where the population growth is immense, and also the industrialization is rapid, and the central power is always dominant, except for India. And these matters, I think, aid the cultural and the literacy of the critical issues. And also the second one is the split priority of the government fund. And this can be the last one, because there's a few fishermen, and including Japan, because the Japanese fishermen are now counted as 200,000 or less. And annual reduction percentage is said to be 8 to 10%. People are just abandoning the fishing in Japanese zone. But what are you thinking about I was extremely interested in about the view that how you rate the Chinese or Indian and let's say Indonesian, participation to the Nagoya.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, very good question, because I was also amazed to see how much well, for example, the Chinese were absent in Nagoya. Yeah. They were absent. I was not in the official room, I was not part of the official delegation, so I just enjoyed all the side events there and all the documentation, pile of documentation we have on the table, and nothing from China, almost nothing from China. I was saying, where are they? No presentation, nothing. Yeah. So I don't know what's the meaning of it, but because of course they have researchers, there are people there, but certainly I don't know. It was a political choice, I guess. In China, nothing is well.
So this is not the time for us to talk about the Senkaku.
Well, I mean, okay, that's a different matter. Here that was Nagoya. It was to talk about biodiversity. Okay, conservation of biodiversity. So it may look a little bit less strategic than fighting up for the control of the tiny island, but a huge maritime territory. Yes, of course. So I think this is done by totally different people. I mean, from the political point of view, even in China. So Ministry of Environment are not the Ministry of Defense or the or the Coast Guards or things like that. It's quite different. So it is why the integrated maritime policy is so difficult to achieve, because you have to bring these people all together. And for all the countries, it's really a big challenge. But we know, since we are dealing with a common area where there are no boundaries, by definition, in the ocean, we have anyway to do it and to try to really to come up to that kind of integration in a way or another. It's going to be very difficult, but I say this is a challenge of sustainable development, including for the ocean. And the ocean is 70% of our planet. So, and it is I saw in The Economist, one of the last issue of The Economist, they were talking about the forest, the lung of Earth. If the forest is the lung of Earth, I don't know. The ocean is the blood of Earth, probably we should say. So, yeah, so just, I don't know if I answered to your question, but...
Thank you.
mm.